1 second. Laser do 99. Hey everybody, welcome to my review of James Bond, Skyfall. So, this is the third of Daniel Craig's James Bond movie after it was rebooted in the movie Casino Royale and followed up with a really disappointing Bond film, of course, Quantum of Solace. At least I was disappointed in it. Some people like it. But here is the third film in the in this new franchise. I don't know what number it is because James Bond's been around forever, guys. This is his 50th year anniversary. 50 years. So, you know, going into this, there's a lot of hype and I was really excited. So let's see how it turned out. So Skyfall basically starts on a mission where James Bond is trying to get back these names that are all the operatives, not just of England's, but of all countries of NATO that has spies in certain organizations. Spies in, like, terrorist organizations and, all around the world. All the names of all the spies. And James Bond is trying to get it back. And while he's doing it, he gets shot and, like you saw in the trailer, falls off the bridge and thought to be dead. And so the guys get away with the names, and James Bond decides to just say, you know what, I'm not going back to MI6, I'm done. Because M basically said, take the shot. You got the girl only had time for the shot, and it had to go through James Bond in order for the girl, and M's like, just take the shot, it doesn't matter. And so, he's feeling a little bit betrayed by M, who just basically said, who cares about Bond? You have to stop him. Kill him. So, so the movie then takes, at some time later, where somebody attacks MI6's headquarters and is definitely gunning for M, who, of course, if you don't know, played by Judi Dench. So, the story is about James Bond coming back after being dead for so long, and going back into the game, and it's really a story about James Bond and M, and their interactions together. So let me just say from the back, my favorite James Bond film, and it still is Casino Royale. It's Daniel Craig totally blew away the role for me there, and he continues here. He's a really good James Bond, and in my mind is the best. There's Sean Connery, of course, but I just think there's so much more to James Bond's character in these films. And, Sean Connery is the classic, but I still think Daniel Craig is the best. So let's just start with what I like about this film. I really like some of the my favorite stuff is definitely the stuff with Q, because the moment I saw Q in the trailer, I'm like, that's perfect. It's not the old Q. It's a definitely rebooted version of the character, and I could tell by the first 5 seconds in the trailer that I was going to love the character. Lo and behold, I did. The guy who plays him plays a really young, smart aleck guy, but you can still see instances of the old Q in there when he says, please, just don't wreck this stuff. And I like how the gadgets are simplistic in this movie. There's no ring that you just happen to have that can break bulletproof glass. I hate you. There's no gimmicky stuff. All he gets for items is a distress radio and a handgun that can only be fired by him. Simple. As I said, I also like Daniel Craig as James Bond. And the whole overarching story is about him and M and their whole interactions together. Because M has, the impossible job. Because, she has to make life and death decisions that can hang in the head of millions of people every day and make some of the tough decisions that nobody should want to have to make. But you also get the thing is, she's kind of some of her past stuff is coming back to haunt her, some of her past decisions. So we got our villain, Javier Bardem, who plays the villain known as Silver. Now, Javier Bardem played one of the creepiest and scariest villains in No Country for Old Men, and he definitely doesn't play the same style, but he's still quite effective. He plays the part of a maniac villain really well, and even though there's some scenes where I didn't fully like the scene, I was uneasy, and I was like, whoa, I'm uneasy. I don't usually get uneasy in movies. Like, as I didn't like what the character was doing in the scenes, but I'm like, okay, well, he's kind of making me feel uneasy. That's good for a villain to do. However, I will say that I wasn't fully getting into this movie. I was I was feeling like, well, this, like, everyone's saying that this is the new best James Bond movie, but I'm not totally feeling it. And it wasn't until after the movie was over that I finally got why. The movie is about James Bond and M. That's what the movie's about. You know, James Bond, Javier Bardem's character Silver, and M are... It's basically James Bond is what Silver used to be, and Silver is a reaction of what James Bond could be because of M's decisions. But I guess the reason that I realized that I wasn't fully enjoying myself is I'm not a big fan of Judi Dench's M. Not that she was bad or anything, it's just that I always found her fine as a side character role. But when we bring her into one of the main character roles and interactions, I was just like, well, I don't know, I wanted it to be more just about James Bond rather than about James Bond and M. And maybe I just want there to be more at stake, where the only thing at stake here is if Judi Dench is going to live or die. You know, I wanted the stakes to be a little higher, you know, like in Casino Royale, the stakes could be that they have to beat this thing, or else they could be funding terrorism, and I don't know, the stakes seemed a little bit higher. Nevertheless, just because it's not my type of story isn't a complaint against the movie. That's just... Anywho, it's not that it counts against the movie. That's a personal preference, and I can't count that as a mark against the movie, because just because it's not exactly like the James Bond movie I enjoy, that's not a complaint. However, just because it wasn't fully the movie I was expecting or wanting, doesn't mean it's a bad movie by any means. I would say there's pacing issues, but it's not exactly that there's pacing issues. It's not as action focused as other movies. When the action scenes happen, they're there and they're awesome. Though I will say, I think the action kind of peaked a little early with the first action sequence that you jumped into right in the beginning of the movie. That, I think, it was probably the best out of all. Like, the end was pretty good too, but it felt like I thought the coolness of the action kind of peaked a little early for me. But I will say that the action was pretty good, but it's not action-oriented, the story, and maybe that was a little off-putting for me for a James Bond movie. So I think there are some scenes that maybe slow down a little bit too much for my liking, but they're there to enforce the drama and the whole point of the story. I will say there's something that I applaud this movie for doing. It got rid of a couple of the cliches that we always think with James Bond. First cliche, people shoot every single bullet at the guy, but they never hit him. In the first fight scene, James Bond's still doing something cool, but he has to expose himself while doing it and gets hit by a couple of bullets in the very first fight scene. And so you feel like he could actually get hit anytime. The other thing is, James Bond is so cool he doesn't even sweat. No. Because they addressed that after being out of the business for... I keep on forgetting how long he was out. But, you know, after being out of MI6 for so long, he's like... He can't even shoot a target. He can't even shoot a still target in his first few tries. And, you know, he's just being out of the thing too long. It's really drained him, and so there are scenes where he does stuff that's still pretty awesome and pretty cool, but you're like, oh man, he's like just hanging on. You know, he's barely getting through this. And I think that's a really interesting take to do for Bond, and is really new for the series, where we felt like James Bond is the guy that can do no wrong. That can shoot someone, not even look at him, and he'd be dead. A lot of people have brought this up in their reviews, so I'm going to bring it up here too. The visuals are really well done in this movie. Like when he's in Shanghai, it looks really cool. The different styles looks really awesome. I think that the visuals for this movie are really, really well done. You know, I think that this movie is good enough that it's going to get some Oscar nominations. Maybe not in the acting or directing categories, but definitely in like cinematography and music. And, well, I don't know, it's the James Bond music, but still, it was still awesome. Also, this movie does great stuff, and by referencing older Bond movies, I'm not going to give away what scene it was, but there was one reference, or homage, or whatever you want to show it, to an older Bond movie, and in it, I just laughed. Like, yeah, that's awesome. Then I heard everybody else laughing, but I'm like, wait, why are they laughing? It's not like a funny scene. Then I looked at and realized, oh man, they're laughing at me because of my laugh. that was much louder than I had wanted it to be. You know, it was just such an awesome moment that it got an outburst of laughter from me that the entire theater heard. So that's an accomplishment movie. I applaud you for that. There is one thing in this movie that bugged me. It's whenever James Bond is running, it lacks urgency. It feels like he's going for a jog sometimes. He needs to go and take some lessons from Tom Cruise for when it comes to running, because here's Tom Cruise running. And now here's James Bond running in this movie.
You have to hurry. Have to hurry. Have to hurry.
You know, I just think that it felt like a lack, which is weird because when he's ever running in Casino Royale, it always looks like he's giving it his all. But in here, it felt like he was almost holding back some. It's a nitpick, but I just felt his running, whenever he was running, felt a lack of urgency. You know, hurry up. There's lives hanging in the balance. However, overall, I think that Skyfall is a good movie. It's really entertaining. If you were disappointed in Quantum of Solace like I was, then I think this will get your spirits right back up there and get you back into the James Bond movie. So, Mr. Bond, congratulations on 50 years of movie making. You're the character that has made more movies than I think as anybody else. So, good on you, Mr. Bond. And so, my final score for James Bond Skyfall is 7.5 out of 10. It was a fun movie, I fully enjoyed myself, and I think that you guys could definitely check it out. So remember guys, I'm LazyDude99, and if I don't like it, it's not worth it. See you around. Be sure to check out more of my other videos on my channel, and wait for more coming soon.